welcome everybody to I guess the second episode of the Vibe Check. We just didn't have a name for it last time. So it was a mashup. Now I guess it's a show because our shows can't get their shit together. So here we are. John and I love randomly talking movies, and I'm off from work. So I was like, hey, John, do you want to talk some movies? Because we can't get our other show going.
I love that, rather than complimenting us, you rather than compliment us, because for me, the other side of the spectrum for me is you and I are the reliable ones.
Yes.
You say, hey, John, throw out a movie. I'll throw out we are done within the afternoon. We are set and locked.
We have a date within 24 hours. It's good.
We are the consistent variable in this whole system. And so for me, the joy of this whole process has been spending more time with you, and those jamokes can go hit the bricks.
So I just love talking movies, and John and I have varied tastes of stuff we can throw out there. Even the stuff we threw out there to match up for these, which the theme of this is we each bring a movie, and then the other person picks a movie that we think matches the vibe of the other one.
So in the end, we talk 4 movies.
Yes.
But we start with each of us bringing something to the table, and then we try to, hey, what energy can match these 2 films,
And we couldn't have had 2 more widely varied ones. I picked Apt Pupil by Bryan Singer, starring Sir Ian McKellan, and with a young, now passed away star, Brad Renfro at the time, who I gotta say, I'll get to it when we talk about the movie, but the kid had such an intensity about him. Apparently there was a lot of darkness in his life too, but we'll get to that. And then you picked from Sir Ridley Scott, The Martian, which, funny enough, I text John, I'm like, I don't think I've ever watched this movie. I convinced myself that I had. I read the book.
Oh, did you? Yeah,
but I never watched the movie, and I think that's where my wires crossed.
Sure. And I'm trying to remember it's Andy Weir, I think, is the writer of the book.
Yes.
Really a popular book that hit digitally and then was so popular it got a bidding war to be a film. And the film was basically almost like shooting by the time they actually started making published paper copies of that book.
Do you remember Ready Player One was the other?
Yeah, Ready Player One, exactly the same.
50 Shades of Grey was another one that it was a Twilight fanfic that ended up becoming this gigantic juggernaut.
Yeah.
We had midnight release parties at Barnes & Noble for 50 Shades of Grey.
I love it.
It was insane. The Harry Potter, I understood. Twilight by the second book, I understood. Oh no! We had full on people Team Bella, Team Team Edward, Team Werewolf guy.
Taylor my daughters are gonna kill me. My daughters are gonna kill me. Edward and oh my god,
Jacob.
There it is. Yes.
Yeah. So we had Team Edward, Team Jacob people coming in, and they were doing trivia contests. We had big stuff for that. I mean, nothing will ever match Harry Potter. And then we had 50 Shades of Grey, the second one. And
it's 50 Shades Darker, right?
I don't even remember.
I think it's 50 Shades Darker, and then the last one's 50 Shades Freed.
Yeah, it was Cougar Night at my store. It was just I'm handing out the books, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
All right. And then there'd be a teen walking up. I was like, no fucking way. Is your mom here?
So one of my favorites, I love every once in a while, I work really hard on my social media on Instagram to make sure I'm feeding the social media algorithm stuff that's not going to make me tired, frustrated, and angry when I log into my social media. I don't hate view, and I don't like anger tag, and I don't do any of that stuff. I avoid that political stuff as much as possible. But I love it because what that happens is sometimes I get led down a crazy, odd, quirky stream. Lately, it's been me, Jen, and Sheena, HK Wifey, have discovered saucy women reading like naughty books Instagram, it's hilarious. The women who are like love reading like risque novels, and then they make these hilarious like memes and gifs and like videos, reels, and whatever, TikToks all about it. Like I keep sending them to Sheena, she keeps sending them to me. I'm dead. Like how I could watch these ladies and their love for saucy books like forever.
So I remember when I was at Barnes and Noble still, when the Amazon like publish yourself book things was going on.
Right.
The crazy like weird porn books. Like there was Pokey Butt Go.
I mean, it's hilarious.
There was Women on Dinosaur like passion books. Like
yeah.
And the covers are probably better than anything that's in those books.
I think it takes subgenres to a new level because you've got like all of these like sexy fairies, you know, saucy devils, and like there's a whole genre of people doing devil stories where like the devil is like getting it on with people, or like the fairy nymphs out in the woodlands and you're finding your love, and it's like I love it. For me it's like you can find anything that you will enjoy in literature and in movies or whatever. So like the people that have found their joy and that are just like chasing it with their whole passion, like I love it. I love seeing that.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure Jen hunts it down because she's a degenerate.
Get it, girl. Get your who's it hurting? It's not hurting anybody, right? Like find your joy and share it. And then make amazing TikToks that make me and Sheena laugh. That's what I want. That's what I want all of it to be.
So everything we talked about had nothing to do with movies, but kind of tangentially because we were talking about books that became movies and bidding wars. So both of our main things are based off of books.
Yeah.
Apt Pupil was a short novella by Stephen King. Might have been from Different Seasons. I can't remember. Okay.
So Different Seasons, for those that don't know, is just
Stand By Me.
Yeah, it's such a phenomenal book. And I obviously you got Shawshank and Stand By Me both in there.
Yes.
But then this one, Apt Pupil, is the third. I can't remember for the life of me the fourth one. I think Stand By Me is like autumn. I think this movie is supposed to be summer. And I think spring is Shawshank. So I can't remember what the winter story is. But what an amazing novella that it would have these 4 stories, and 3 of them would become these absolutely like gut-wrenching films. Impressive.
Also, a lot of them, what the movies ended up being and what the book actually was, like they took a snack and turned it into a 4-course meal.
Truly. I mean, when you put somebody like a Rob Reiner on a movie, or a Frank Darabont, who clearly Frank Darabont gets Stephen King pretty much better than anybody gets Stephen King. You put these kind of level people on a product, I think you're going to get something special. So I want to dive into Apt Pupil first, because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. And I remember it being, from when I saw it back when I was working in a video store, being like so difficult to watch, intentionally difficult. I mean, it is definitely Stephen King and Bryan Singer and whomever else trying to make you uncomfortable in the moment. Like it is a difficult viewing.
So I want to lead off first with one thing. Now watching it, knowing what I know about Bryan Singer, I got very uncomfortable during a couple of scenes where I'm like, all right,
shower, right? The shower.
Yes, 100%, because I was like, this is going on too long.
Do you remember the scandal of that?
No.
So for those that don't know, Apt Pupil focuses on a young teen who is very troubled in his life, figuring out that his neighbor was a member of the Nazis, worked in concentration camps, and has been hiding out. He then blackmails his neighbor into teaching him everything. And it leads to some really amazing sequences that are really dark and really like intense. It gives me very American History X kind of vibes.
So that was something when I watch it. So weirdly, like this movie, when I first watched it, for some reason, never disturbed me as much as it did this time. It wasn't as uncomfortable, maybe because
you were younger. You probably didn't appreciate it the same way.
So,
but this one scene is like, as a, after PE or whatever sport or whatever, the kid is in the shower with all of his buddies, and he starts picturing the Jews in the gas chamber showers. And I mean, that alone, that concept, that visual is brutally intense. The problem is Bryan Singer shot it with underage kids semi-naked in a shower, and
with the main star facing forward,
and
while everybody else was.
But bigger issue is he didn't properly inform the parents of the kids what he was doing. And later, when the kids complained, there was lawsuits involved where the parents of the kids sued the production, and it was a big noisemaker because he wasn't upfront enough with what they'd have to wear, what they would shoot. Nowadays, you talk about like what they shoot, and when there's any nudity involved, it is very difficult to get around any of that stuff. And I think Bryan Singer made some big mistakes, and clearly his proclivities and his questionable decision-making played into that. That sequence in particular, lawsuits were around it. So you've got Rita Hayworth is the Hope Springs. Apt Pupil is the Summer of Corruption. Fall from Innocence is the breathing method. So the body is the Fall from Innocence, and the breathing method is Winter's Tale. So I haven't read Breathing Method in a long time. I don't necessarily remember what the winter story was. So I don't remember
either. It's been 30 years since I last read that. Yeah, at least.
But the others, are very. Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption is pretty damn close, but obviously they expand on it in a big way. But the voiceover from Red is like they took straight snippets and dropped it right into the movie from that. It goes back and forth. The body, obviously, they the stand, to become Stand By Me for sure, yeah.
Not The Stand, it was a different movie, totally different movie,
but another Stephen King.
Yes. So, watching this now, the one thing I had a complete different take. I didn't think that Brad Renfro's character was that troubled. I felt like everything came too easy for him. Like he was more scared about his parents
than troubled.
Yeah. So the fact that he goes over to Ian McKellen's house, he's like, "Oh yeah, I dusted your mailbox. I had to go over to the toy barn or whatever and get the dust and stuff." And he's like, "Yeah, I had 40 or was it 17 or 47 direct correlations with your fingerprints in the database."
Yeah. I think there are a lot of flaws in the movie. I love the concept and I love the performances.
Ian McKellen's performance was
McKellen is like the stuff of nightmares. And I think he gets what Stephen King was trying to do the same way he gets what Tolkien was trying to do in Lord of the Rings. I think, or what Claremont was trying to do in X-Men. I think he gets the source material well. I do think this movie has some script problems that don't quite resolve themselves, but I do love the movie is really looking at history and its relationship to current events. And I think you do see a young, spoiled, in my opinion, somewhat troubled young guy who, rather than deal with his baggage, is becoming obsessed with things that are going to make life worse. It's a dark concept, and we're living in some of this era where people are trying to defend white nationalism and defend white supremacy and act like, oh, those Nazis aren't so bad, or those people. It's like the cognitive dissonance is shocking, and I think this movie taps into some of that.
It's part of why I picked it, because there's a lot of this going on, and how it's associated.
Raising interesting questions, right? Thanks, JP. I know it's a roller coaster ride, and we've still got two more that we've kept secret from you. In a little bit here, when we finish talking about Apt Pupil, I'll mention the movie that I think has the same vibe as Apt Pupil, or at least gave me the vibes. But you were going to say something about the current state of America.
The theme of this movie, I would say, and something we've talked about in a lot of the movies we've talked about in the last year: obsession, manipulation.
Yeah.
and the kid becoming obsessed, and his manipulation of Ian McKellen, but then Ian McKellen kind of starts turning it on him.
Yeah.
But
it's a power play, right? It's a power play.
There is a clip where he brings him a Nazi SS uniform and makes him start marching.
That for me is the scariest moment in the movie.
Yes, it is the most intense, scariest, because when he starts without Brad Renfro telling him, he keeps going and going, and he's shouting, "Stop."
You can see the muscle memory and the things that are so ingrained in him that the second he's in that, it's almost like, you know, when actors talk about putting on clothing and feeling like they become a character, you can see that McKellen putting that gear on has reverted completely to the version of himself he used to be. Even if he had made amends and grown, he is completely backslid.
And he makes that comment, "Boy, you don't know what you've just unleashed."
Yeah.
And I don't think Brad Renfro really gets it at the time.
No, but he's ignorant because it's the ignorance of youth.
And this kid, he's manipulating, he's basically blackmailing him. I mean, he's a villain. He very much is a villain.
Well, there's no good guys in this.
No, but like his facial gestures, and this is where the darkness of probably him in general, because he passed away not long after this movie. I can't remember if it was drugs or taking his own life, but he had issues in his life.
I think he took his own life, but yeah.
There's a darkness that just he's portraying in his face, where I say some people, when they're facial, because every time he's confronted, all of a sudden he turns blank. Like he shuts off all emotion.
Yeah.
And we talk about people who were strangely cast in movies. David Schwimmer is so weirdly cast with that porn stash.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of flaws. It's my least of the 4 movies we'll talk about tonight. It's probably my least favorite, but I also feel like there's so much potential. There are so many big ideas. There are so many powerful moments. I'm not trying to dismiss it as a bad movie, but the screenwriting flaws are rampant, and there are sequences that just don't work. There are characters that just don't work.
Oh, the cat in the oven. Oh.
I mean, they were trying to create their own Fatal Attraction moment, but it just collapsed.
No. The most powerful moment to me is when the former person who escaped Auschwitz was in the hospital room with him and recognizes him when he falls into the nurse's arms.
Yeah.
And he starts just crying. Oh my God. Like,
you know what? This just made me realize another vibe movie for Apt Pupil. I don't know if you ever saw Sigourney Weaver in Death and the Maiden.
No.
So I'm going to mention this, and those of you, this is how this show always works with Dan and I. We spiral around to other things. So this is another troubled director, Roman Polanski film based on a play, and it centers around what country is it? It might be Nicaragua. No, we haven't even gotten to The Martian yet. The first half is Apt Pupil. Second half is The Martian. We'll get there, JP. We're only 15 minutes in, man, or whatever, up to 18 minutes. So Death and the Maiden is about Sigourney Weaver plays a woman who was a protester in a Latin American country. I want to say Nicaragua, but I could be wrong. And the government at the time was rounding up those kinds of people and taking them to torture camps, right? So she was rounded up. She was taken away. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little dark, a little crazy. And tortured. And the doctor who tortured her did all kinds of horrible things to her. And she's still dealing with the trauma of this, Sigourney Weaver's character. And she's living in a quiet little house way out by the ocean. It's been years later. There's a new government in power. And her husband is a politician in this new government. And she's very quiet. She hides in her closet sometimes, and she can't go out in public. She just really gets nervous. Yes. So one night her husband comes home, and Ben Kingsley's driving the car when he comes home, and she hears them talking, and she hides in the bedroom. She doesn't want to be there. It turns out her husband had a flat and got picked up on the road by this guy. Hearing this guy's voice, she's convinced this guy who picked up her husband and helped him on the way home, is the doctor who tortured her decades ago. So what she does is bursts out, knocks her husband out, ties this guy up, and wants to torture him till he admits who he is. She was blindfolded the whole time, so she never saw this doctor's face, but she's convinced it's Ben Kingsley. So the whole play and the whole movie basically takes place in the living room of this house, where she's trying to force Ben Kingsley to admit it. And her husband's like, sweetie, you are unstable. This is awful. You're torturing this poor guy who gave me a ride home. And the play and the movie is a roller coaster. And you just don't know who is right and who is wrong and what is real and what is not. But it's that moment from the hospital that you're talking about from Apt Pupil, where you just, your trauma might be masking something real or not. And Sigourney Weaver, Ben Kingsley are phenomenal, by the way. Inspiration, always make time for quality friends. Dan is phenomenal too. I mean, honestly, I adore doing shows with Dan, and I'm happy that Carlito's out of here. We don't need that guy. Get that fire guy Ryan out of here. We don't need his lazy butt. Greg can come and go as he pleases. He gets his work done. But anyways, if you haven't seen Death and the Maiden, it's an underappreciated Polanski movie, and it's ultimately like a play. It's shot in one room almost completely. And Weaver, I'm still stunned to this day she wasn't nominated for an Oscar. She is just perfect. Great movie. And tense, like it feels like an old Hitchcockian like Rope kind of a movie. And it was a good vibe to this movie. Actually, it probably has more of the emotional dread of Apt Pupil than the movie I did pick.
I also wanted to comment, the score on this is way too fucking bombastic by John Ottman.
Yeah, it doesn't suit. It doesn't fit. It doesn't have the eerie like creepiness that the movie's trying to get.
No, it felt like it was like Beetlejuice, like it was just too big and bombastic. Funny thing, this same composer was fired from H2O, Halloween H2O.
Ooh.
Because he was too bombastic, so they basically replaced him with the Scream composer.
All right, so I'm gonna tell you the movie that I picked. Ultimately, the challenge of the vibe test here is like the vibe check is: am I going with a movie that is literally similar or a movie that is figuratively similar? Because there's a lot of options on either side, and I tend to be more literal than figurative. If I was figurative, I might have gone with Death and the Maiden. Literally, my first thought was, and I joked with you, my first thought was Karate Kid. Because you basically have a World War II veteran who's teaching a traumatized kid his trade so that he can use it to deal with the modern world he's living in. So
the angry white folk in town.
There's definitely a vibe check between Apt Pupil and Karate Kid, but I did not go with Karate Kid. In the end, I went with an off-kilter movie that I loved in college that I hadn't seen in a long time called Wonder Boys, and I'm curious if you had time to watch it or if you remember it, if you'd seen it before.
So, funny enough, I got to watch half of it.
Okay.
The power went out.
Oh no!
For a while, so we had thunderstorms, so I never got to finish it. Sure. I read the book years and years ago by Michael Chabon.
Yeah,
Chabon
or whatever. Yeah.
So my definition of this movie is what the fuck could happen next, because literally so much weird shit goes on.
So good.
Repeatedly, and Tobey Maguire is so unhinged in this. And I'm going to tell everybody, there's a movie he did with Jake Gyllenhaal called Brothers.
Yes.
Where he is so good.
Yeah.
Coming back from Afghanistan. Like,
yeah, it's powerful.
It's an underrated role, and I don't think he gets enough attention for.
So I picked this movie because if those of you that haven't seen it, it stars Michael Douglas as a pot-addicted English professor who has derailed his life because he hasn't gotten over his mega success when he was young and a really bad set of relationships he's had with women. And as a result, he is just not the person you want teaching America's youth. And He is teaching America's youth. So ultimately, it's a vibe check of bad teachers and the children who go to them to be corrupted. In this case, we have Tobey Maguire as the main young man being sort of mentored by Michael Douglas's teacher.
Living at his house.
It's a comedy. You get some really great performances. Robert Downey Jr. for me is hilarious as the agent who is arriving to try to convince Douglas to give him his new book, even though it's like 7 drawers deep worth of pages. And young Tobey Maguire as the writer who's in Douglas's classroom, who has a book and may also have a fluid sexuality and be interested in Downey Jr. on the side. Lots of roller coasters going on here. Frances McDormand gives a great performance here.
Yes. So Michael Douglas his character is having an affair with the head of his English department's wife.
Correct.
Who is Frances McDormand, and gets her pregnant.
Yes.
And
it all comes to a head over a really bad weekend when everything goes wrong. Cars are stolen, clothing is lost. Yes. Dogs are shot.
Kept in a car trunk.
It is hilarious. And I really do enjoy the movie. It is a modern screwball comedy. If you like the old screwball comedies in the heyday of film, I think you'll like this. It is a roller coaster of bad choices and bad results. And
could have been Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis in this movie easily,
or Cary Grant or whomever. Yeah. It does feel like one of those old comedies, but done in a modern sensibility. Curtis Hanson, who did LA Confidential, directed this. You would never guess it's the same guy that did LA Confidential. And then it's written by Stephen Clovis, who I really love. He wrote most of the Harry Potter movies, but he also wrote, The Fabulous Baker Boys. And he's just he wrote and directed The Lookout with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, a sort of heist thriller. Really talented guy. And he just gets adaptation. He takes really good books for the most part and adapts them into really quality movies. So check out Wonder Boys if you haven't seen it. It's the yin yang to Apt Pupil in that it's a comedy versus the horror of Apt Pupil. But in both cases, you have young men learning from people they should not be learning from. This is bad teachers, basically. Boomer out.
Tony.
Bye, Tony.
So my vibe for this, and I've kind of mentioned it before, Halloween Ends.
I haven't seen it.
So this young man, the town's basically called the new boogeyman.
Okay.
Because he accidentally killed a child. Accidentally, the kid fell down the stairs and broke his neck. So the whole town turned on calling him the new serial killer because after Michael Myers disappeared at the end of Halloween Kills, he ends up having an Apt Pupil moment with Michael. He starts living in the sewer and finds Michael in there and starts kind of taking on the evil of Michael and bullying him to show him how to kill.
So I will admit, I haven't seen a Halloween movie since H2O. I've skipped everything post H2O.
You missed out on Busta Rhymes karate kicking him out a window.
Personally, I like the ending to H2O. I think it works.
It should have ended the series.
Yeah, you could even watch Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and H2O and be done with the entire. It's a trilogy that works independent of all the other stuff. And I liked it that way. So I have not watched. I don't like Michael Myers as unkillable. I don't want a Freddy Krueger or a Jason. I like him as human, but just deranged.
See, Carlito liked the kid coming down the stairs at the beginning.
There you
go. So it was something because I considered it a manipulation in this movie. So it was kind of had vibes of Apt Pupil, not the same.
A kid being taken advantage of by
he's taking advantage of Michael to a degree, and then it kind of turns on him.
Gotcha.
Because he starts taking on the characteristics.
Which is what happens to the character in Apt Pupil,
Yeah, so that's something I would say is my vibe check for it because it kind of has that vibe. I'm sure if I think about it further, someone could probably read into almost the Godfather 3.
Right. I mean, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since Carlito's here, because the Andy Garcia character,
he's being suckered into a situation he should not get into. He should
honestly,
walk away.
Low key, Andy Garcia is brilliant in that movie and the standout of part 3.
He is the only performance worth watching. Even Al Pacino blows it in that movie. I think
I don't care about the girl. Put the gun down. Put the gun down.
Such a good scene. Such a good scene. Yeah. I don't. The reality. I heard and I'm probably going to quote a critic talking about those movies, the Godfather trilogy, who captured my thought on it really well, and I was able to like sum it up. And the idea is that it's a movie you don't need.
Yeah.
The ending of the first film is Pacino's wife, Kay, realizing that I married the wrong guy, and that the man is becoming someone I don't know. The ending of the second film is Michael realizing that. Michael realizing part 2 is so good. Michael realizes I'm becoming a thing I didn't want to become, and I
killed your baby, Michael. I ended this whole Sicilian revenge thing.
I don't need the third film because I don't need to see Michael finish becoming this. Like, it's done. Ultimately the end of the second film shows us he's going to become a tragic mistake. I don't need to see the tragic mistake happen. And I think that's the fundamental flaw of the third film, is the second movie makes it unnecessary.
Pretty much.
So the beauty of those final scenes in 1 and 2 is that they showcase what's coming next. The second film was necessary because we need Michael to realize what his wife realized in one movie. He needed 2 movies to figure it out.
Well, I mean, just the whole part with Fredo at the end.
It's the moment you look at his face when Fredo's dying, and you can see a passive lack of emotion, but I think it belies a horror that he realizes he's become the monster he was claiming to be better than. He knows he's become the thing that he thought he was superior to, I
would say there's even that moment in The Wire where what was
cop, criminal, what are we doing?
No, the younger nephew of D.
Okay.
When he starts,
one of the Barksdale crew,
Barksdale's nephew,
okay,
who the early episodes focused on heavily, where he starts realizing there's more than the game. When he starts learning chess and starts teaching it to everybody, and he starts having that realization, and even his friend, who is played by Michael B. Jordan, who gets out,
right? Yep.
There's moments like that, and even freaking McNulty has that moment.
I think that's toward the benefit of the final seasons is you see McNulty owning what he is, versus the earlier seasons he's fighting what he is, and then later you see him owning it. But so should we jump to the other half of the show? Are we ready to move?
Let's move on to The Martian, because this is more raw in my brain, because I can't believe, and I have a lot of fucking comments to make about Ridley Scott, because I will say this is a long movie.
Did you watch the director's cut or
I watched the director's edition.
Okay, it's 2.5 hours. Yeah,
2 hours and 44 minutes.
Yeah,
and the pacing in this movie is pristine. And I started getting mad. I was like, "Where was this in Prometheus? Where was this in Alien Covenant? Where was this in Blade Runner 2049?"
Hey, no, don't you burn on my 2049. I actually
I like the movie, but
okay.
I remember he started doing press. He goes, "The movie's too fucking long." That's my fault. I fucking wrote the movie.
And it's a great comment, because I think both the book and the movie The Martian are immaculately timed. Like the pacing is great. The moments are strong. It builds, the tension goes back and forth.
You don't linger.
You can't possibly predict what's going to happen beyond knowing that it's Matt Damon and he probably won't die. You can't really predict anything. And I think that's the beauty of it's a simple idea. You know, it's like Hatchet. It's the man versus nature, right? He's trying to survive a hostile environment, but it really is a masterpiece. Both, again, the book, if you've never read Andy Weir's book, the theatrical version is about 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think, something like that. And then the director's cut's another 20 minutes. Most of the DVDs and digital downloads are the director's version, which are great. Like, I don't know that there's a flaw to either one. I think you'll enjoy both. I don't know that any problem. I will say I absolutely like it more than Interstellar. I'm happy to say I like it more than Interstellar. I think the Interstellar suffers from a horrible Matt Damon performance. You know, let's just throw the Matt Damon performances up here. Matt Damon in The Martian's way up here. Matt Damon in Interstellar is way down here. But I think Interstellar has flaws for me that just don't work. Whereas The Martian, every single moment works. You may not love it because it is pop Hollywood Spielberg-esque stuff. Hey, next time watch the movies, do your homework. You can join the show. I think, you know, The Martian is pop music. It is Spielberg-esque. It is Ridley Scott doing Spielberg in a way. But I think it also just highlights what an absolute like technician Scott can be with quality material.
Very much. You can tell that he didn't write it because it was very tight.
Yeah. Who was the writer?
Andy Weir did the
He wrote the screenplay. There you go.
He helped with the screenplay. So
Gotcha.
I'm sure there was a, you know, person behind them going, well, let's just
William Goldsman or somebody coming through to touch it up.
Yeah. So when I was texting you about it, I was like, man, the movie moved, you know, at a great pace for that long. I never was looking at my phone, my watch.
Right.
And I said,
Actor? Should we do edgy for?
No. The movie that we talked about, not Black Hawk Down.
2001?
No.
You were going to talk Kubrick at some point.
No. So the movie I compared pacing for. It was the Catherine Bigelow Zero Dark 30.
Oh, Zero Dark 30.
Where it just never lingered. It just kept moving and moving and moving.
The intensity.
Yeah. So like you never sat somewhere long enough, and even when you were, something was happening that was meaningful.
Yeah. Well, like, I think it both movies are puzzles, right? Where characters are trying to solve a puzzle. And obviously they both have Jessica Chastain doing great work, but like they're puzzles where the hero is stuck dealing with seemingly an impossible task. And over a length of time, the running time of the movie, they're piecing together how to master this difficult equation.
And then a quarter of this cast ended up being in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Notice that. I absolutely adored.
Just were missing Benedict Cumberbatch.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Ejiofor, yeah.
Ejiofor. I'm killing his first name, but
he's a phenomenal actor.
Great in this movie. If you've never watched the movie Kinky Boots,
yes, I have seen.
He is phenomenal in that movie, and of course, I loved him as the villain in Serenity.
Yes, I was going to say the first time I ever heard of him, he was the bad guy in the movie that followed the Firefly TV show Serenity.
Yes.
Great performance. Like, talk about a guy who had the big shoes to fill coming in to be the baddie against all these awesome actors from the show. He just nailed it.
There's my favorite line from that is like, oh, I have no place in the next world. He's like, I'm a monster.
Yeah.
I have no place there. Neither do you.
I'm not making this world so I can live in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they talk about the scariest thing is a believer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that movie is full of great lines. Most of them said by Nathan Fillion, but full of great lines.
But he's so charismatic being bad. And in this movie, we've all had this moment, and I posted the clip of it where he's on the ground going,
so good.
So, do you think he means, are you serious?
Are you serious?
Or are you serious?
Kidding me? No,
are you kidding me? Oh, yeah. It was like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. She's like, everybody's reading your
I think it's the first one. It's so good. Yeah. The movie's
like, we've all had that moment reading a text going.
I think that the beauty of the movie and the book, too, is that it balances, heady science math intense emotion and fear, and then this odd, like, morbid comedy. There's this wonderful, like, comedy to this whole process where you can see it's like soldiers on the front line or death row inmates who are like, when you're staring down the end of your life, at least like you can laugh at the absurdity, right?
So I wanted an after credit scene with them watching all the videos he made goofing on them.
Right.
Like, especially like when he found Johansson's leather girls or whatever.
And all the
like,
all the disco era music, and yeah.
Listen, I'm touching your sample box. I'm touching it. There's certain things where, yeah, it's people who were in the military basically fucking with each other nonstop.
Yes. Yeah.
And good cast.
There's a ton of great science in there, and my oldest Kate has read the book and loved it. We've all seen the movie and loved it. And I think it's just got a lot of great examinations of man versus nature, what you would be willing to do to survive. I'm really happy vibe check wise, and I mentioned this to you. I thought for sure I was going to end up having to rewatch The Revenant, which I probably would have walked away from this whole thing if I had to do that. I really dislike The Revenant.
But there is an attention to detail in this movie where when Matt Damon's showering, showing he has sores from malnutrition.
Yeah.
That was an attention to detail where I was like, of course he'd have scurvy.
Yeah. His dietary issues would be dramatic. Right? Yeah.
So looking at that, I was like, okay, they added that in. Like,
JP, I'm willing to bet there's probably a phenomenal audio version if you ever want to try. I have no idea who's reading it, but I'm sure there's a good one somewhere.
The greatest audiobook I have ever listened to was World War Z. Mark Hamill's doing voices in it. Like, it's an all-star cast doing voices. So every character has their own voice. It's an ensemble.
Good. So good. That sounds like a perfect pick.
And
yeah, definitely check it
out. Good
Omens. JP. The book is great, and again, the math and the science I find fascinating. And
it goes a lot more into detail in the book.
They do a great job of explaining stuff. I should say, I keep saying they. Andy Weir does a great job of explaining it. And he spent a ton of time with NASA engineers going over all these questions. Really cool. What movie? I don't even know what movie you're saying now. No, Revenant. World War Z. Sorry, he hated World War Z. I hate The Revenant. You hate World War Z. Whatever.
The Revenant wasn't terrible, but it wasn't Oscar-worthy performance.
It just seemed useless. The whole movie just seemed pointless and stupid, and I didn't care about this character's troubles and tribulations. Like, it's just stupid. I was so annoyed by the end of that movie. I was done. I wish the bear just eaten that guy. What's up, Perry?
Ew.
But let's talk about the movie that you did vibe check for The Martian.
So this was more of a person in space alone. And I did from Duncan Jones, a.k.a. David Bowie's son.
David Bowie Jr.
He did Moon, starring Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
With Sam Rockwell.
And the voice of Kevin Spacey.
Yes. He's basically Hal from 2000. This is basically 2001. But done more charismatic and less auteur. This is a very depressing movie. I don't remember it being as depressing as it was.
Yeah. Moon is definitely heavy. Because it's about the pointlessness of life, and
especially near the end.
Yeah, those that haven't seen it, Sam Rockwell plays a person who is basically running mining machines on the moon and sending minerals back, and has basically signed up for an extended stay. I don't remember how many years it was. And
I want to say it was 3 years, because every 3 years.
So the idea was he's near the end of his 3 years and he's kind of waiting it out, but he also is like all by himself with just this Kevin Spacey voice and these machines to keep him company. And he's starting to lose his grip. And the question he is asking himself is like, who am I? Am I me? Is this real? What's going on? It's an interesting movie with a lot of fun twists that I don't necessarily want to fully ruin, but like the concept is very heady.
It's depressing. And then the Kevin Spacey robot has emojis when it talks. There'll be smiley faces, frowny faces.
I love that it
non-expressive
didn't
face.
get too high tech. It feels low tech, which I feel is
Yes.
more accurate to our space program.
There was models and everything that they use, like when they show it running over something in the lander.
Yeah.
I didn't remember it being that depressing, and I was like, shit, maybe I should have picked another movie popped in my head.
Yeah.
From Danny Boyle. It's called Sunshine.
Yeah. Oof.
And that was another like
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Craziness movie, but I remember it was beautifully shot and had just the most incredible score to it. That one popped in my head. Chris Evans is in it, playing one of the first hands.
Is it Cillian Murphy? What's his name?
Cillian Murphy, yes.
Cillian Murphy, who's in
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, basically everything Christopher Nolan's ever done. And then he was on the TV show, the HBO one where he's a gangster in England. Crap. My wife's going to kill me. She's the one that watched it all. I never finished it. I watched like a couple episodes and never finished it.
I'm trying to think. It was HBO Gangster with Cillian Murphy.
You don't remember it or no?
I don't remember. That's why I'm like, where's Carlito when you need him?
Yeah, he's in the chat still. There it is. Peaky
Blinders.
There's my wife walked in right when I was talking about it. We're talking about Cillian Murphy and some of his movies.
Barbenheimer.
Thanks, baby.
Are you taking your girls to see Barbie?
I will. I do want to see Barbie. I'm down. I'm actually, sorry, Carlito, more interested in Barbie than Oppenheimer at this point. So here's why I think Moon is a good fit. I think Moon is an examination of isolation. It's an examination of like the fear and loneliness that you have. It's obviously a one-sided story. We don't get all the people back on Earth and all the things going on that we get in The Martian. But it is basically the Matt Damon half of The Martian set aside. And I think that part works. I think in that way it works as like a psychological examination of isolation,
And honestly, I like Moon so much better than 2001.
Okay, here, yeah. Let's open the floor up for you on this because I know you wanted to expound a little bit here.
So, Kubrick is an abusive prick for one of the If you watch anything about what he did to Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining, it's just straight abusive.
I mean, you could say the same about people like Hitchcock, and I still love his movies.
Yes,
it's hard.
I think the extent he went like way over, and even you see Stephen King talking about their interactions where he's like, this prick purposely changed stuff just to piss me off.
Yeah.
So to say that he did not love The Shining.
Yeah. Well, I still think one of the stupidest things I've ever heard Stephen King say is that the croquet mallet is better than the axe. So in the book, it's not an axe that Jack Nicholson's character breaks the door down with. It's a croquet mallet. I think that's laughable. I think that's stupid. And I've heard Stephen King talk about how it needed to be a croquet mallet and he didn't understand why it had to become an axe. And I was like, you're a moron. If you can't get cinematically, Steven Weber with his stupid croquet mallet looks like an idiot in that miniseries. It's dumb. It's dumb.
Just watch.
It needed to be an axe. I'm sorry.
Just watch Maximum Overdrive, the movie that Stephen King directed. That will answer every question about cocaine and bad ideas.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, I will fully agree. I think in the pantheon of cinematic, experiences and filmmakers over the years, I think it is easy to place Stanley Kubrick on the top of the list of the most pretentious, most obnoxious, and most overrated filmmakers, period. Now, does that mean he's horrible? No, it means he's kept on such a high pedestal that even if I pull him down like 100 notches, he's still among probably the most revolutionary people in cinema. But I think he is massively overrated. And I only truly love maybe 3 of his movies ever. I think most of his movies are just absolutely overrated. So sorry about that. If anybody's a mega Kubrick fan, apologies to your sensibilities, but I'm not a fan.
Well, even after watching that Room 227 or not 227, that's a comedy about Marley Gibbs and her family.
That one. Yeah.
That it's about the Shining, the making of it. And they're like, it's about all these theories about what
I've never seen
hid in the movie. It's a documentary. It's like 5
Okay.
hours long of people with their nut job theories about
like all the symbology and metaphor and stuff.
The rug on the floor actually is the map for Cape Canaveral launch facility.
So now there are some of his that I love. So those of you in the chat like JP and I that don't feel like we're 2001 fans or Clockwork Orange fans or whatever, if you've never seen Paths of Glory, that'll make you rethink your appreciation of Kubrick. It's one of his earliest movies, a black and white World War I, I believe, drama about soldiers who abandoned their posts during a siege with French and German soldiers. And the whole movie is a courtroom drama where Kirk Douglas is the lawyer forced to represent those 3 soldiers chosen at random from the group that retreated as dereliction of duty. And if they are found guilty, they will be executed. So they're basically on trial for their lives because they retreated from the front line in the middle of a battle. And the whole movie centers around Kirk Douglas trying to prove that these 3 guys did the right thing. It was a losing engagement. They didn't stand a chance, and they just tried to save their lives. This is not worthy of them dying. It's a powerful courtroom drama. The sequences where they show trench warfare, the photography is buck wild. And if you're not weeping in the final moments, I don't know, something's wrong with you. But Paths of Glory is a masterpiece. You should watch it. Obviously, Dr. Strangelove is phenomenal. Great movie. You should check it out. And then Spartacus. I'm down for Spartacus. Give me more Spartacus. Obviously, there's some homoerotic whatever, but like it's a really good movie. So those are the 3 movies, again, very early in his career. I think once he got like pretentious and popular, he felt like he could do whatever he wanted. And that's when the movies kind of fell apart because nobody said no to him anymore. So, but those 3, if you've never seen those movies, Paths of Glory is still my favorite all the way. Dr. Strangelove right under it. And then Spartacus is pretty distant third, but those 3 are good.
So talking about where people stop saying no to people, there is a podcast called Blank Check. And they talk about directors that get to that point where they have a blank check and where it all goes wrong.
Yes.
And they focus on different directors. Like they had one for John Carpenter.
Okay. I want you to name one guy. I'm hoping.
So John Carpenter is Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Oh God, yeah, absolute disaster.
Where like he tried to.
There's a filmmaker that is massively beloved by the world who I think derailed when he started getting blank checks, and I have not loved a single one of his movies since then, even though they're nominated for awards and he's very popular.
Coppola,
Quentin Tarantino.
Ooh.
Quentin Tarantino is absolutely the perfect example of the blank check filmmaker. He has gotten to a place where his movies, in my opinion, are just a mess. Ever since Kill Bill, his movies are an absolute mess. And you could even throw Kill Bill in and I would accept it. I think he just gets a blank check. Nobody says no. Nobody tells him he's wrong. Nobody gets in his way about anything. And he just does whatever the heck he likes. There it is, JP. He is an absolute disaster these days. Now, he writes great moments. He writes great dialogue. He's very good with character, but his movies as a whole are worthless. His movies become an absolute train wreck. There's great moments in Django Unchained, and it all just becomes stupid at the end. And there are great moments in Inglourious Bastards, and then it all just falls apart. And I've yet to actually watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it just looks like a mess. It looks like a mess to me. From the outside looking in, it looks stupid.
I would
yes, I got Carlito to agree with me about something. There you go. For me, Quentin Tarantino is the top example of the blank check. I would throw Scorsese in there. I would throw Woody Allen in there. I'd throw all these guys, the big guys in there. The reason Spielberg doesn't get thrown in there is because he intentionally puts roadblocks in his creativity to make it hard for him.
Guy
And I
Ritchie.
think it forces him to kind of like be creative in the moment, and he doesn't just accept the blank check. That's why movies like Private Ryan or Schindler's List are still really great masterpieces late in his career. He is refusing to just accept things for what they are.
So Blank Check did a whole series on Kubrick.
I mean, you'd have to.
Dr. Strangelove, 2001, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, and then Eyes Wide Shut.
So what was the movie he did before Eyes Wide Shut? Chronological. I should look it up. I'm sorry. I thought you were reading them in order, and then I realized it was not in order. Kubrick. All right. So do you want to talk a little bit more about Moon or about 2001? Are you good?
So I'm not saying 2001's a bad movie, but I felt Moon had more emotion to it. And I always felt 2001 was such a sterile, unfeeling movie. And of course, Hal was supposed to be like that with hello, David.
Yeah. I mean, there are great moments in all Kubrick movies, but I like Tarantino. They are derailed by the eccentricities of the filmmaker who just has nobody saying no to them. So the movie before Eyes Wide Shut was Full Metal Jacket, which I feel like is two interesting movies that don't sew together.
No.
The boot camp movie should have been the movie.
Yes.
The second half of that movie where they're actually in combat is just useless.
Well, also, that and Platoon came out 3 months apart.
Yeah. Before that was The Shining. Before that was Barry Lyndon, which is a disaster of a movie. And then Clockwork, then 2001, then Strangelove, then Lolita, Spartacus, Paths of Glory, The Killing, Killer's Kiss, and Fear and Desire. So I did those in reverse order, reverse chronological. Anyways, yeah, I do agree. He is another example of somebody that just became auteur pretentious and then nobody says no to them.
Well, I saw somebody was doing a list of greatest movies and they were like, well, we can't put Citizen Kane in there because everybody puts that. I was like, I get what you're saying, but I also think Citizen Kane was so groundbreaking at the time it came out. You can't not do it. I went through a whole AFI's top 100 one summer.
Right.
Bridge on the River Kwai is a movie that is so underrated.
It's a masterpiece.
And
but so is like Lawrence of Arabia, and I mean, so I think it's a great point you're raising, and the point is, how do you place historical context onto entertainment, whether it's a book, a comic, a film, a TV series, a play, whatever? How do you place historical context on, and what merit or value does it carry with it? Because if you watch Citizen Kane now, just as it is, and Perry would be an example of somebody that I know has thought about doing a Citizen Kane watch, it will probably only carry about half the weight that it carried on its original release, because the revolutionary things it did are commonplace now. And so as a result, historical context, if you don't know it, makes that movie seem bland in some ways. And the revolutionary concepts of movies told out of order, movies with a narrator who is not really in the story telling the story, movies with unreliable narrators explaining characters, movies with a hero that's not really a good guy. There were so many things besides, of course, the cinematography elements that he was doing that really position that movie differently in a historical context.
And how it also influenced Tommy Wiseau in The Room for destroying a room, but never as good as Orson Welles playing Charles Kane.
Right. I will also say I'm not a mega Orson Welles fan. I own Touch of Evil and Citizen Kane, but I'm not a mega and the Muppets.
So the opening of Touch of Evil actually,
what a great scene!
John Carpenter used that as influence for the beginning of Halloween. That and Rocky, the fight scene with the Steadicam, were the two biggest influences to start Halloween movie
That's
and
cool.
the art of it.
That's how I feel about our Sandman discussion last night. So, JP, you're saying the historical value of Sandman is in the context, or at least a portion of the joy would be in the context historically that the Sandman comic book has now, the impact it has had since then. And that's a great perspective that I hadn't even considered, especially considering I haven't finished reading Sandman.
We talked about it Tuesday night because Chris, Lost in Comics, had just been reading the Alan Moore Swamp Thing.
Sure.
And I said basically without Alan Moore Swamp Thing, Neil Gaiman leaves comics altogether. That actually got him still involved in comics.
Right.
So we never get Sandman probably without Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
And that's like tangential, but like when you talk substantive, you talk about what Orson Welles was doing with Citizen Kane. Like stories were never told in flashback before. Like
no.
that was a revolutionary idea that you would tell a story with flashbacks. Nowadays, I mean, the better example is no Citizen Kane, no Christopher Nolan. His entire career of like chopping things out of order doesn't exist without Orson Welles breaking that mold. And then, of course, the anti-hero main character. What a revolutionary idea that you'd have a hero character who is really unlikable. Like your main character is almost the villain. And you're centering a whole movie around him. And not only that, you're not getting the real guy, you're getting several characters' perceptions of the real guy, which is another interesting perspective that a movie had never tried before. You know?
The forced perspective where they were digging out holes to get forced perspective shots.
The cinematography and lighting elements, the camera movement elements that they were doing, obviously also completely, revolutionized filmmaking. But the story elements too, like just the concepts of how to tell a story totally changed.
I mean, Spielberg with Jaws, it's an accident that worked. Like that's fucking shark.
That concept of don't show the bad guy, but instead like hold back the reveal, right?
Well, they were forced to because that shark didn't work.
And as a result, that difficulty created genius, right? It forced creativity. And I think that's something Spielberg has learned, because you look at his decision, in making Schindler's List of not using the steady cam, not using the rails and the smooth panning skills that he learned so long. The choice not to use those tools in the beach at Normandy scenes in Saving Private Ryan, he set restrictions on himself that he was comfortable with and made the choice, I don't want to be comfortable. I want to be out of pocket on these things. And I think that's a filmmaker knowing themselves enough and having people around them to encourage that creativity versus, those people that just put yes men around them. I think Quentin Tarantino surrounds himself with people that go, yeah, that's a great idea, sir. Do it.
That opening of Saving Private Ryan's probably one of the strongest, most brutal openings of a movie I've watched.
So I will say, firstly, I agree with what you're saying. Secondly, I totally don't. Firstly, yes, that the beach at Normandy scene is probably Spielberg's masterpiece. It is probably the greatest thing he's ever made. It's not the opening to the movie. The opening to the movie is that shitty old guy at the freaking gravestone, and that's the biggest flaw in Saving Private Ryan is that damn opening, which is a flashback to a character who wasn't even at the fucking beach because Matt Damon's character wasn't fucking there because he parachuted behind enemy lines. He wasn't at the beach of Normandy, so why is he remembering the beach at Normandy? This is stupid that he's telling the story. It needed to be Edward Burns, period. Edward Burns is the guy who we should have been standing at the headstone and then seeing. And if you want Damon there too, like fine, but that doesn't make sense that we see the old man's eyes, cut to some splashing water, and then zoom in on Tom Hanks's eyes. That is bullshit screenwriting. That part drives me freaking crazy. I want them to take Saving Private Ryan and just cut the freaking end caps off of that movie and just give me the period in World War II, and then it's a masterpiece. You give me that shitty screenwriting on either end, and it's just bad movie. That's just cheesy bad movie making. Period.
And to go back, without Jaws.
Sorry, I'm really upset about that movie.
Without Jaws, we don't have Jason Statham on a Sea-Doo with a samurai sword going after a megalodon.
Right? There you go. That's what
Listen,
we're really missing out on.
That trailer captured my imagination more than anything else in this world because it's so fucking insane, and I
It's
love
just
Jason
bonkers.
Statham.
It's just bonkers, but it's also like, you know, putting Punisher on that cover where he's riding the Sea-Doo, and it's like you know, kiss that Sea-Doo goodbye, right? Or kiss that you guys know it's the Punisher War Journal or whatever, where he's like on vacation, he's riding the Sea-Doo, and it's like kiss your down payment goodbye or your security deposit or whatever.
Now, how do I get Jason Statham to be the next Punisher in the Marvel universe? I'd take it.
I don't. Could we have a bald Punisher? How's that working?
We got a bullseye. We had that already.
Oh, jeez! How dare you? How dare you bring Ben Affleck's Punisher into this?
Apparently, Elektra is going to be in the Deadpool movie.
So let me derail us one last time, or at least one more time. The movie that I feel like has the best Martian vibe for me is 127 Hours. The movie where James Franco's arm gets stuck in the rock.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a Danny Boyle movie, true story of this climber who fell and a rock pinned him, and he spent 127 hours trying to figure out how to get out of there, and ultimately severed his own arm to escape
and the book is
survive.
insane.
The book is buck wild. The movie is you mentioned pacing. I think Danny Boyle turned a movie with a guy stuck next to a rock for 127 hours into a riveting drama. And I think in both cases, it's man versus nature, right? And man versus self, dealing with your own insecurities and your own limitations. But in both cases, you have an expert filmmaker who can elevate, and then an actor who can carry that weight, and it just becomes something very entertaining. So if you haven't seen 127 hours, it's worth it. What's that?
I think Danny Boyle gets lost when talking about like the really good technical directors, because 28 Days Later was filmed on a Sony Handycam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Early digital filmmaking. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can never be put in 4K. So no matter what, it's going to look like shit because it was done on a Handycam. But that movie is done so well.
Absolutely.
Brilliantly done. Even the sequel with Rose Byrne, Moira McTaggart.
Is that the
Jeremy Renner 28 weeks later?
Weeks later. Because then didn't they do months later too?
Nope.
Oh, they haven't done months later.
No. Apparently they're talking about 28 years later.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I don't know if I need that, but
so if you guys are enjoying this show, by the way, please leave a comment on Dan's video when this goes posted. Tell us any movies that you think have the same vibe as either Apt Pupil or The Martian. That's kind of the fun of this is, you know, whether you do this literally, like literally this movie follows the same plot points as the movie, or figuratively this movie has some of the same feelings, some of the same intensity or whatever. The fun of this is pairing up movies that maybe don't go together. Karate Kid and Apt Pupil might not logically slip into your mind like it did to me, but that's the fun of it. And we appreciate you guys connecting with us because we want to do more of these. This is just Dan and I wanting to talk movies and not being able to have anybody time up with us. So we both throw movies at each other and then come back with movies that hit the vibe. And then we schedule a show and do it. So this is our second one. We did one of these on my channel. So just follow everybody and jump back and forth because we will do this again.
And if you're not subscribed, I'm 39 short of hitting 500.
Do it. Yes.
Go ahead and do it.
Please do. Yeah.
Oh, but Castaway, yeah, Castaway would be a good one. Castaway is, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many great, I think, man versus nature stories. And I think there's a lot of great options. But yeah, I love Castaway. And talk about another great filmmaker, Zemeckis, and another great talent, Tom Hanks, and just carrying the weight of a really intense movie. Right? Great pick. I
heard something, speaking of Zemeckis, there is a Gremlins coming out.
Is that would that be the third?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm just making sure I didn't miss a crappy reboot somewhere.
No, and I was like,
seems like something that should have been rebooted by now.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be like a soft reboot. I was like, I don't know if I need to see Billy Peltzer all grown up.
I would be surprised if they bring any of the same actors back. If we get Phoebe Cates, though, I'm signing now. I'll pay my money for a Phoebe Cates movie. Bring Phoebe back again. I'm in.
She hasn't been in a lot in a long time.
No.
But good Lord, I imagine she probably aged just like Jennifer Connelly.
I'd like to hope.
And Linda Carter.
Right.
Yeah, like the ageless ones.
Well, yeah. I just watched the Top Gun Maverick again the other day. Jennifer Connelly. Right.
I still have not watched it. I have Paramount Plus and I haven't watched it yet. I am gonna go see Mission Impossible tomorrow or Saturday. The Dead Reckoning. Since Carlito can go to see all these movies, but he can't actually watch the movies that he
so on that same like aged well vibe, I was trying to look it up because I knew that Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son, who does a lot of the stuff, married a lady that I got to see in person a handful of years ago, but hasn't been doing movies in a long time. And I was like, wow, she looks just absolutely the same. Amazing. I was at an event and Brian Henson was like performing up front and talking to people afterwards. And his wife was in the back. And I was like, oh my God, that's Mia Sara from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She stopped acting. She married Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son. And so she hasn't done movies in a long time. And she looked amazing. Like she looked exactly the same.
So the last movie I saw her in was Time Cop.
So right. I haven't she's done movies since then, but nothing I've really seen. And she's done some TV and stuff, but she just basically does whatever she wants. And Brian Henson runs he's big connection to the Henson Corporation.
Yeah,
they're part of Disney and all that kind of stuff. But like she looked amazing. She was super nice. I was like, oh my God, I love Legend and all this stuff. And she was like super nice and answered questions. And because her husband was doing his thing, and I was just a fan at the back talking to her. I didn't, harass her. I hope. I was working for the film festival where they were doing this stuff. So I had a badge that made me look professional in some way, but really sweet, really nice, and looked exactly the same. Like just looked amazing.
I went to a Scott Pilgrim event, and Aubrey Plaza was probably one of the nicest people I've met. She was like super, super nice. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was super nice too.
Oh yeah, I bet. She seems like somebody who would be.
Also, like, did you see the trailer for the newest Blue Beetle trailer that dropped?
I saw a Blue Beetle trailer.
It was the one that dropped Tuesday.
Oh, then no. The one I saw was the one that came with the Flash. And I saw that in the theater. And it's fine. I don't know that I have like an excitement to see it. But
there was something in the newest trailer. They showed the old school, the Blue Beetle ship.
And
I was like, all right, you're kind of dragging me in. And then I saw the Ahsoka trailer, which had me very excited.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's like a 2.5 minute trailer, but
it's just her basically like slow walking the whole time.
Oh no, it hit everything. Like it had a lot of Sabine in it, and the newest character, Ray Winstone, not Ray Winstone.
Stevenson,
or is he the one that just died?
Ray Stevenson was the Punisher.
Yeah, no, I forget who it is in this. He's playing one of the Dark Jedi in this.
Gotcha. All
right. They showed a lot of these new Jedis, and then they showed Grand Admiral Thrawn, who Tessa immediately ruined, saying that he looked like Elon Musk.
JP, I think they're on. Is it MI7 now? And the new one that's coming out, I think, is 7.
Yeah.
I will say 4 and 5 are my two favorites. So if you've missed either. My personal favorite is Rogue Nation. I think it's great. Ghost Protocol, also really, really good. If you've missed either of those, you'll really enjoy those.
The Philip Seymour Hoffman one
was number 3, and I thought that was great as well.
His performance was amazing.
He's phenomenal.
I'm gonna find her.
I think Fallout is a little overrated. That's the one with Henry Cavill, but it's still entertaining. It
was fun.
It was fine. For me, I like an element of realism where I can believe this is happening. The helicopter chase at the end of that movie, I was like, okay, you've killed it. Now I don't want complete realism from a Mission Impossible movie, but I want to feel like that's really Tom. This is really humanly possible. Whatever. But 4 is my favorite, and that's Rogue Nation. That's the one that introduces this new baddie. And then Ghost Protocol is good, very good. Maybe I have those backwards. I might remember, but they're both. I put them both like neck and neck. And then 3 would be my third favorite. So 3, 4, and 5 are the best ones in the lot for me. And so, I'm a Tom Cruise fanboy. Like I generally will see everything he does. I finally watched Maverick, like I said, a second time, and I liked it more the second time. I still don't understand, and maybe it's just post-COVID, people going back to theaters again for the first time. I don't understand the people that are calling Maverick the greatest movie they've ever seen or one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't even know that I would put it above the original Top Gun for me. So I'm just like baffled by the people that keep telling me it's their favorite movie of all time. I'm like, it's entertaining, but it's just the original film rediced and re-edited and made into a new movie. It's fine and it's entertaining. I just don't know. The first one with Renner and where he's climbing the Burj Khalifa on the outside. Is that Ghost Protocol or Rogue Nation? I think it's Rogue Nation. And then Ghost Protocol is my favorite one. I think the one with the new baddie and the woman Rebecca Ferguson. The first Rebecca Ferguson one is my favorite. That's the one I like the most. So I enjoyed Maverick. I'm not hating Maverick. I'm entertained by it or whatever, but it just felt like a shadowy reflection of the original. And I like the original just fine. As a homoerotic, manfest, it's fine. But the original movie has, Val Kilmer doing a better performance. I give Rick Rossovich a better performance. Like the actors in the original movie are way better than the actors in the new movie. So like, I just don't, I have several friends who keep telling me it's their all-time favorite movie. Justin No Good Comics is one of them. And I'm just like, it's really
saw it way
good.
Too many times.
I'm just baffled. I think what it is people that were missing that movie theater experience went back and saw this IMAX movie with this incredible spectacle. And in that theater experience, it was like they fell back in love with movies. And in that way, it has this pivotal moment in their lives. And like that I would get. Talk about a historical context, right? But for me, it's just like it's entertaining and just fun. And that's where it's a great popcorn movie.
Justin thinks every movie's the best when he walks out of them. I noticed that on his Instagram stories. It's always like, boom, loved it. And I'm just like,
he and his wife have those like passes where they pay one flat number and they can go as many times as they want. And they go to see everything. And I love it about them. And so I always ask him, like, is this movie worth seeing? Because me and my girls, we're a little more choosy on what we go and see. It's almost all comic stuff. But I love it. Yeah, I love his enthusiasm. And same with Two Brothers Comics. Those guys loved Top Gun Maverick too. And I love enthusiasm. Yeah, so, and Carlito and his love for Tenet has made me revisit that movie several times and find a lot of enjoyment in it. So I appreciate that enthusiasm.
So my favorite thing going back to still probably was The Prestige.
Sure.
Because that was one to go back to and go, oh, I missed that. Oh,
the second viewing, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inception also was one that I kind of go back to a lot.
You just made best friends with the Carlito. These last 2 sentences you've dropped.
We've talked about it. I mean, but I don't think he likes Inception as much as I do. But Dunkirk, probably low key.
It's a great movie.
Pretty high, but the sound engineering in that movie is so top tier.
Oof, yeah. I always say this, and maybe it's just like the experience of going to film school where you watch movies more than once and you study and write essays on them and stuff. For me, like I've grown to understand that the second time I watch a movie is always my favorite time. Most people are like, oh, I wish I could go back and see this movie again for the first time. And I never have that feeling. My feeling is always, I wish I could go back and watch it the second time. Because now I've experienced it and I've got all this information, but now I want to take the time to understand the artistry and understand why they did a certain thing a certain way, what the decision making was, because I start questioning why I didn't like or I did like something. And I might completely change, not completely, I might alter my perspective a little, because now I'm able to take in more than just the initial response. I'm able to understand the choices filmmakers were making, or actors were making, or editors, whatever, all the way through. So I love watching a movie the second time. It's my favorite. Even movies I hated, I'll watch a second time just to be like, why did I hate this so much?
Pacing is the thing that will take me out of a movie quicker than anything.
For sure.
One, I did have my friend just watch The Invitation.
I'm sorry, Carlito and I are bonding through the chat right now. Yeah, Invitation, great movie. Wow.
She was like, "Why are you having me watch this?" I was like, "Just watch it. Like, it's not a horror movie. It's more of a drama with a horror tinge that you don't see coming." Yeah. And she texts me later. She goes, "What the fuck did you just make me watch?"
She's like, it was bothering her. It's one of those movies. The Invitation is one of those movies you watch it and you don't realize what's happening, and you're worried about what might be happening. It's all built on the tension of what the reveal is going to be. Kind of like a good Hitchcock movie like Rope, I've mentioned a couple of times, where you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for the penny to drop, right? And when that moment happens, of course, it's thrilling. But what Hitchcock gets, and what those filmmakers of Invitation get, is that the anticipation is way better. And so they spend the whole movie making you question everything. They make you doubt everything. And then so that when you get to the end, you're just like, that was well worth it. Like the shark character, finally seeing the shark at the end of Jaws. Yeah. You're just like, you've invested so much by that. And the payoff works. So yeah, if you like thrilling suspense horror, Invitation is a top tier example. It's a Hitchcock. It's a modern Hitchcock. For sure.
It's on Pluto TV, the free app right now. Yeah. Totally worth watching. Like the commercials, I think there's 2 in the 2 hours.
So if he's recommending at the end of the show here, we're wrapping up Invitation. I'm recommending Death and the Maiden, Roman Polanski. It's really just 3 actors, and I'm sorry I can't remember the guy who plays the husband, but it's Sigourney Weaver, Ben Kingsley, and then the man who plays Sigourney's husband is Stuart something. He's usually playing the bad guy in a lot of things. He was in No Escape with Ray Liotta. He was the bad guy in that. Great actor. But anyways, it's a 3-actor play.
Stuart Wilson.
There it is. Play movie. The Death and the Maiden. If you've never seen it, Death and the Maiden is a song.
Streaming on Tubi and Crackle for free.
There you go. The title comes from a song that it's an orchestrated piece that the villain who tortured Sigourney Weaver's character when she was young would play whenever he came in to see her. And so she can't hear the song anymore. But of course, once she's tied him to the chair, she starts playing the song for him. And it becomes this very twisted, perverse thing.
Like In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida with Red Dragon.
I mean, yeah, but it's all just, violins and cellos and trumpets and things.
Good night, horse.
So that would be my recommendation leaving this show. If you haven't seen that, it's a movie that I saw in the theater and was just like, I fell in love with Sigourney Weaver again. Like I loved her from Alien and Working Girl and so many things when I was a kid. But then I saw that as a college kid and I was like, wow, she's just freaking awesome.
Both movies are free streaming on those 2 apps. So no reason not to check them out. I will say another movie, just mentioning Polanski. If you've never seen The Kid Stays in the Picture.
No.
Which is
a documentary, right?
That's a documentary. Yeah. It's a major player in Hollywood and Robert...
I want to say he's got 2 first names. He's a producer. He produced the Ocean's 11 movies, the current and the
Robert
original.
Evans.
Yeah, Evans. See, I knew it was 2 first names.
It's fascinating. He calls Polanski a stubborn Polak repeatedly in it.
So Robert Evans, for those who know, a major Hollywood player, Chinatown, lots of big hits, and then of course the Jack Nicholson, Roman Polanski drama that fell out created a big hurdle in his life, but he's continued to make movies. He was a producer, and he actually had a role in the Ocean's 11 film, the remake of Ocean's 11. Big name, big guy. And they did a documentary about his life called The Kid Stays in the Picture.
Never mind. I lost
my
train of thought.
We've done enough recommendations. You got lots of things to go see now, folks. We will be back, though, for another vibe check at some point.
We might even come back for a director's one. Maybe.
I mean, we do have a couple of directors we're supposed to be watching things for. Carlito. You're supposed to be watching some movies so that we can get together again. I had to rewatch 13th Warrior. You all should take some time to rewatch some movies.
Listen, you know how close I am. Like, I want to rewatch RoboCop and Starship Troopers really badly.
I'll give you the first one. I don't know that I really want to ever see Starship Troopers again.
It's funny.
I get that it's satire. I get that it's like camp. Camp is my least favorite genre, and Starship Troopers is a perfect example of why camp fails.
But his second movie, though, Total Recall.
I love Total Recall. I love RoboCop. I would even be willing to give him Showgirls as a quality version of camp, but I'm not giving him Starship Troopers. It just fails. It fails on so many levels for me. I will watch Showgirls first, but mostly because I like boobs more. What's the line?
Would you like to know more?
There's a line in Ted Lasso when he says, it's like that movie Showgirls. At first, you're just distracted by all the nudity, but then later on, you're just wrapped up in the narrative. So good.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. John has a Ted Lasso stream now, too.
I do. I just did one last Monday with Coach Vic and my man White Comics. I'm planning one that'll probably happen in a couple of weeks because I'm going to be out of town for a little while. But we will do the next one. Should be heavier. It should be mental health related. And it'll be a great chance to just talk about mental health awareness and talk about the amazing comments that Ted Lasso's show makes about mental health.
And next Thursday, I will be here with Tessa and Jennifer, and we're interviewing Sean Lewis, the author of Bliss, Coyotes, Thumbs. He's currently writing King Spawn and The Scorch for McFarlane.
That's a big draw. Big pick.
Mainly having him on here to talk about Bliss because Jen and I apparently need to cry on live streaming.
There you go.
But Thursday night at 9:00. And thank you, everybody. Take care and see you next episode. Bye.